Welcome, everybody, to the 49ers Gameday Preview. I'm Jack Hammer. We have a little bit of a different look today. My co-host is going to be the one, the only Rob Schuh from All 49ers SI. And, you've hopefully, if you're following me, you're following Rob as well. He's got a great channel, puts out really good content, and he does his own shows as well as working with. He had me on earlier this week, and he does a weekly show with Grant Cohn over on his channel. So, so some things changed, and it was time to call an audible. And Rob graciously accepted my late invitation to come in here and talk some 49ers football today. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing well, Jack. I'm doing well, and I'm thrilled to be here. It's a nice change of pace to be on the live stream on Sundays. I was thinking of doing a pregame pump up show anyway. This was exactly what I needed, so I was thrilled when you reached out. It is my birthday weekend. I had my birthday on Thursday, so a little less sleep than I might typically have night before a show, but I'm feeling good.
That's awesome. Happy birthday. I didn't realize that. And I think I might have seen something on Twitter about that. But hey, happy birthday. We won't ask how old you are because
that's okay. I'm 43 and proud, baby. 43 and proud.
We're not too far apart. And one of the funny stories, if it's okay that I say this, was when I reached out to Rob this morning to ask if he'd want to come on, and his first comment was, "Shoot, that means I got to wake up before noon on a Sunday and take a shower."
Yeah, gotta get ready before noon. That's just, typically it is PJs all day on Sunday, right?
That's right. Exactly. If you don't have to go anywhere, especially with the weather that we have in the Bay Area today, it would definitely be a PJ on the couch with a blanket kind of day watching some football.
Welcome to our everyday in autumn in Portland, right? You guys are finally experiencing in the Bay what we have on a regular basis this time of year. It is gray, overcast, and raining consistently.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same up there as it is down here usually.
No, the 49ers should have come up here to practice this week to experience the wet balls.
They would, instead of having to dunk them in the
that's right.
in the bucket, right?
That's right.
Perfect. So big game tonight. 49ers taking on the Colts. I understand, both teams only have 2 wins on the season, but that doesn't make it any less important for the 49ers because they can get to 500 on the season, and we'll see what happens as far as this game goes. But one of the big storylines all week this week has been the return of DeForest Buckner to Santa Clara. And what are some of your thoughts on kind of everything that's transpired around DeForest Buckner and also tonight's game?
Jack, what a painful week this was in reliving a trade that I think most 49ers fans like myself have bad memories about. I was listening to several key people in my life that are 49ers related, NFL related, Tony Dungy, Matt Mayoko, Matt Barrows. I heard all 3 this week provide their sentiment on the Buckner trade. And much like myself, all 3 were against it at the time and remain so today. It was heartbreaking for an organization that asks, a lot of their players want players to be leaders in the community and want to build specifically through the defensive line. Then you have a player who excels in both of those areas. He's top in the leagues as far as talent along the defensive line, and he's everything that you ask for on and off the field, and stays healthy. For a team that can't stay healthy to save their life, stays healthy. It felt like a questionable move at the time, and unfortunately the results of the trade haven't been what you might hope to change your mind.
Yeah, it's been I didn't like the trade when it went down. I was of the impression that the 49ers made the wrong move going with Eric Armstead, and the hope was that the guy that they took in his replacement was going to be able to step up in Javon Kinlaw. Neither one of those has happened. Unfortunately for Armstead and the 49ers, Armstead's continued to be exactly the player that he was pre-2019. He's still that same player. And then you have Javon Kinlaw, who it couldn't work out any better with the storyline this week, in that Javon Kinlaw is not even going to be playing tonight.
Right.
With everything that's been discussed and taking place around that move, to have the draft pick you got back, that's been the main argument around it was, well, of course you trade a defensive tackle if you're going to get a first round pick in the top, 13th pick. That's a no brainer. Well, you've got to get the pick right. And the guy that you're choosing to keep over him's got to be able to maintain that level that makes it worth doing. And the 49ers defense has really dropped off. Defensive line has dropped off as a result of not having that presence in the middle.
Yeah, no question. And it just adds to it that it seems there's a bit of discontent with Kinlaw as well. That now you see an Instagram post that is clearly him venting some frustration with this situation, some frustration with the NFL as a business. So you're looking at a potentially degenerative knee problem and a discontented player on the emotional side of things. It couldn't get much worse for the 49ers in looking across the ball at DeForest Buckner, who is having probably another all-pro season.
Yeah, and I know his numbers so far are maybe not great, but he had the start that he's had to this year is very similar to what he had last year, and I'm talking about Buckner in this case. And Buckner himself is a guy who he's always put up numbers regardless of who's around him. I think he's still going to put up his numbers this year. A lot of things that I've talked about this week, one of them was just the pass rush rate as far as getting to the quarterback, their sack rate, and how it's dropped, where they were in 2018 and how far it dropped in 2020, which kind of makes sense in 2020 because you didn't have Bosa and you didn't have Ford.
Right.
This year you have Bosa and Ford. You still have Armstead, but your pass rush rate is still, in the lower half of the league. And the 49ers just don't get to the quarterback. Buckner's the guy who puts up numbers by himself. He's still doing it in Indy, even though the team in Indianapolis, because they got rid of a couple guys, isn't doing it. It's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out tonight. Kind of, how do you think it's going to go with? Well, real quick before we get there, I do want to address this one question or comment by Chester. Chester says, in hindsight, Buckner is not playing up to that contract in Indy. Well, I'm going to disagree with that, and I'm going to disagree with it from the standpoint that his contract in Indy makes him the second highest paid defensive tackle in the league, behind Aaron Donald. Yep. And in his first year in Indianapolis, he was a first-team All-Pro defensive tackle, which means he's one of the top two defensive tackles. He got paid as the second best defensive tackle in the league, and that's what he was in 2020. So from a payment standpoint, and also think about it this way, from a payment standpoint, he's only getting paid $2.3 million more per year than Eric Armstead, whose production isn't even close to what Buckner does.
That to me is one of the most painful things to look at from the entire scenario. Is even in the AAV of the average salary per year, it was $21 million for Buckner in his new deal versus $17 million for Armstead, if I'm correct on that. I think if you dug into the contractual details, it would be easier for Buckner to earn the entirety of that money as opposed to some of those being stretch statistics for Eric Armstead hitting that actual $17 million figure. But when you hear Buckner say something along the lines of, I was willing to meet the 49ers somewhere in the middle, give them the hometown discount, even though I was expecting my first child. My home is in California, in I believe it's out in Fresno or
Fresno.
Modesto. Yeah, one of those areas. So he's got every incentive to take it, and yet the 49ers don't jump on that. And so when you look at a maximum of $16 million over a 4-year deal and him saying he'd take less than that, that to me is the most painful part when you start to compare and contrast the players.
Oh yeah. And the deal with the Buckner contract that gets lost is that people see the reported number of four years, $84 million. So they look at that as a $21 million deal because that's the reported amount.
Right.
When you actually look at his deal in Indianapolis, it's spread out over 5 years because he still had a year left on his contract. So he's got a 5-year, $96.3 million deal compared to a 5-year, $85 million deal for Armstead. Really, I mean, that's the way that they worked it out in Indy. Sure. And then everybody wants to point to the cap hits, and I know we're going kind of down a rabbit hole away from the game, but the cap hits are separate from what the players get. Cap hits are for the team, and they can they can manipulate those in any way they want as long as certain things are hit, such as the signing bonus being rolled, the same throughout and whatnot.
Yep.
The 49ers could have given him the same money that Indianapolis gave him, and like I said, the difference would have been $2.3 million per year. As far as meeting in the middle, I don't know what that middle is. And even, let's say the middle was $19 million a year. That's still a better deal. And I think what happened was, and this isn't anything that I know for sure, but I think they had a number, and their number was right around probably the 17 million they gave to Armstead. That was probably right around what they said, because that's the way the 49ers usually do business, right? It seems
Yep.
like is they have their number, and it's their Moneyball system and set up, and they probably had 17 million or 18 million right around that range. And from what Buckner said, and we'll take it for what it's worth because it's one side of the story, it doesn't sound like the 49ers really were in a negotiating mood with him.
Nope. And it seems like the Moneyball approach has bit them in the butt this time.
It's bit them in the bottom a lot, right? In a lot of scenarios. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how, as far as tonight's goes, real quick. Can we move Armstead and get Buck? Any way we can move Armstead back? No, that's not gonna happen. That'd be fantastic. But thanks for the donation.
We'll trade him our 2022 first round pick that we don't have.
Yeah, there we go. I like that one. That's a good call. That'd be perfect. But as far as tonight's game with Buckner and that's kind of what I was wanting to get into was more of can the 49ers offensive line, how are they going to handle DeForest Buckner? What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised when you look at this Indianapolis defense to realize that they're first in the league against the rush. But I think that on some level, you have to be able to neutralize Buckner by running at him. Because if he does have one weakness in his game, it would be against the run. And that was what the 49ers were hoping they could upgrade. And it's not necessarily anything more than a physics problem with DeForest Buckner. He's a very tall defensive tackle with extremely long legs. So it puts his center of gravity high. He plays high. Therefore, as the offensive linemen come into him, he doesn't have great leverage against the rush attack. The 49ers have really struggled running to the right, and you just can't abandon that. I feel like you have to get after Buckner. To me, you've got to attack it head on. You've got to run straight at him to attempt to neutralize the pass rush by getting after him in the run game.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be tough for the 49ers. I think they've shown some inability to get movement at the line at the point of attack, especially on the right side with Brunskill and with their center. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of being able. He's probably somebody that they're going to try to run ball right at him. I don't think hopefully for the 49ers standpoint, they're not trying to get Daniel Brunskill one-on-one with him, and they're trying to do some of their moving and bringing down like McGlinchey on blocking down on him or something like that. Hopefully it's not one-on-one because I foresee that being a matchup that's going to be really tough in the middle for McGlinchey if that's where we find Buckner most of the night.
Yeah, that's a critical matchup. I mean, it's predicted to be a rain game tonight. It could range anywhere from what we saw against Washington football team in 2019 to, we all got overexcited about it and it just drizzles a little bit. It could be anywhere in between those two, I'm sure. But you're looking at a wet ball scenario either way. You don't want to have this scenario where Jimmy G is dropping back, taking a long time to let a play progress downfield. Buckner comes in for the sack fumble. I truly believe that turnovers could be the difference in this game. I think that you have to try and minimize those dropbacks where Buckner's really able to get after Jimmy, because I just can't imagine any other scenario than him blowing by Brunskill with what I've seen to this point in the season.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're both going. And there's a really good comment here from John who says, I would normally say Buckner was going to eat them alive on the inside, but then I think about how they handled Donald, so who knows? And they did. They handled Donald pretty well last year, especially in the first game at Levi's. That was the game where Debo was running left and right all over the place on the field. That was Jimmy's return game. Last year as well. All the Jimmy gimmies. That's where that term came from was that game. So maybe that plays into it as well, because they hopefully with the weather like you're talking about, they're able to get the ball to Buckner on those kind of plays, and heaven forbid they actually decide that they want to get the ball into Brandon Ayuk's hands. More than 3 times tonight.
Wouldn't that be something?
Get both those guys the ball out in space. Use that it's kind of a screen game kind of a concept and really get those guys moving on the wet track like they're going to be on tonight. That always favors the offensive side because they know where they're going. The defense doesn't, and so hopefully you get those guys out in space a little bit and maybe let them make some plays.
Yeah, it sets up well for the 49ers to focus on executing in the run game and hitting the short Jimmy gimme short passes.
Yeah, exactly. And then that kind of leads us into our next topic, and that's the return of Jimmy. Jimmy makes his comeback. He's been gone for 2 weeks. Well, he missed 1 week, and then the 49ers didn't play last week. So tonight we get the return of Jimmy Garoppolo to the starting lineup after missing the one game. What are your thoughts on Garoppolo for tonight?
My biggest hope for Jimmy is to make it through this game without re-aggravating that injury. We all saw what happened last year when he attempted to make the return prior to regaining full health. Those lower body injuries are tricky in that regard. Certainly, you imagine that he'll have players around his feet, as always. It's just easy to take some shots, even if you are getting the ball out quickly, as Garoppolo tends to do.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, the way in which you try to ensure that Jimmy has a strong return game is do what you saw within the victory against the Washington football team the last time the 49ers really faced a heavy mud bowl type of a game scenario. And so my hope for Jimmy would be that the 49ers play enough complementary football, are able to run the ball effectively enough, which in that game against the Washington football team, they were only averaging 3.5 yards per carry, but they stuck with it. Jimmy only had 21 attempts. So what I'm looking for out of Jimmy tonight is fewer than 20 attempts. If it sets up in that way, I feel like the game is trending in the 49ers direction.
Yeah, the fact that he had 21, even had 21 attempts in that game, really is a big number when you consider how bad that weather was in that Washington game.
It was atrocious.
Yeah, because it was really bad. And I think tonight, I don't think we're going to see quite that kind of a downpour, but we're going to see a lot of wind. I think it's going to be a really strong wind tonight. The thing for me with the return of Garoppolo is hopefully we see kind of the return of the 49ers offensive identity. Get back to using these running backs. They've got three that they can go with tonight. You're going to see Elijah Mitchell. You're going to see Jermichael Hasty make his return off the IR tonight, and also you have the other rookie Trey Sermon active. So those are your three backs. I don't know if they'll have the fourth, and I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be Trenton Cannon, or I think the other one's on the practice squad. Correct? The big guy they got from Cincinnati, he's on the practice squad, so he won't be active. But I think between those three guys, if we can see 30 to 35 carries a night, that bodes well for the 49ers. And Garoppolo I don't think Garoppolo has to necessarily be the hero in this game. Just get the ball to your playmakers, get the ball to Debo, get the ball to these guys short, and let them make some plays. That's what I would hope to see out of him tonight.
Yeah, and for my money, the most important thing for Jimmy is ball security. You absolutely cannot afford the turnovers in this game because you're probably looking at an even closer matchup than your typical NFL game, which is already typically a one-possession game to begin with.
Sure. And he did have that interception in that game last year or 2 years ago against Washington. He had that one interception. So hopefully they don't have that, and we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll even have a wide receiver throw a touchdown like what we saw Kendrick. Well, it's too bad that Kendrick Bourne isn't a 49er because they would have had another touchdown there.
It is. And those are the kind of hands that you're looking for. You wonder if it'll come into play. The 49ers with their, terrible drop percentage to this point in the season. Now you're looking at a game where you have the wet ball syndrome, where it's tough to catch balls in the NFL regardless, but all of a sudden sprinkle on some water. And in California, where you're not used to it, it gets trickier.
Yeah. And, this doesn't really work probably tonight. This next question that I have, because of the fact that we have this weather coming in, but are the 49ers offense, can they generate some explosive plays? We've seen them drop off. There's been a big drop this year from where they were. Even last year was a little bit better than this year, and in 2019 they were about 3 explosive plays per game better than they are this year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you're looking at an explosive play as a 10 plus yard run or a 15 plus yard pass. So that's somewhere between 30 to 45 yards of offense that the 49ers aren't getting this year out of explosive plays. And I think that's an issue. Plus, you look at the DeForest Buckner piece, that the 49ers starting field position this year has been their worst since 2015. They're starting, I think, on their own 24 and a half yard line, somewhere around there. So it's the 30th. It's 30th in the NFL currently. So they're usually facing long fields. And Kai Huschek mentioned that this week about the inability to get explosive plays. What are some of the things you think there?
Yeah, it certainly feels as if the 49ers have failed to execute their offense effectively, and that has led to a drop-off in the explosive plays. You would hope that an increased time off, time away has allowed the 49ers to get back on track in that regard. And specifically for me, it starts at the top with Coach Shanahan, that he needs to take some ownership of this and get the offense executing on all cylinders when they're back on the field. It certainly hurts to lose George Kittle. I have been watching some of the downfield blocks, and certainly Ross Dwelley is a phenomenal pass catcher, but I don't believe him to be the same effective downfield blocker that George Kittle is. And especially for the explosive run plays, it's the continuation of those blocks. It's those second level blocks that really are going to allow for the backs to be able to break these. And some of it also has to be on the rookie running backs themselves, the vision, the downfield vision, the last cut. You saw it with Elijah Mitchell in one of the plays against Arizona, where it felt as if he could have cut left towards the corner of the end zone on his long run. Instead, he cut inside and was tackled, and the 49ers couldn't then get the ball into the end zone on that series. So it's a combination of factors. What I'm hoping to see from the 49ers is progress this weekend. I don't need to see huge leaps and bounds, but I want the 49ers offense to feel less disjointed such that it gives me hope going forward. It won't take a huge performance to beat a also flawed team in Indianapolis, but there are some tough games on the horizon. So this to me is a chance to take those incremental steps.
Yeah, I agree. And the running game is definitely a portion of that lack of explosion right now. Mitchell is their more explosive of the backs that they have in the backfield. He's at about 13% of his carries getting 10 plus yards, and Sermon is only about 6.5, so he's about half that number. And we'll see what happens how much they decide to run a guy like Jermichael Hasty, because he has 1 in 6 carries. So, we'll see what happens with that group. I think that's where the explosive plays are most likely going to come from, would be their running game. That's where they need to come from. Maybe, or who knows, maybe they're going to get one out of Debo tonight. Maybe Debo's going to take one, 20 yards of screen pass like he did last year in that game against the Rams, right? And the Jimmy Gimme game against the Rams, where he ran I think it was a jet sweep to the left side, got tackled, but was able to keep going and get about a 20-yard gain out of it. Those are the kind of plays that they're going to need, I think, tonight in order to win the game, and really what they're going to need moving forward overall.
Yeah, to me, that would be the combination of, if we can get the run game going, where I see primarily that it is 49ers players that need to execute at a higher level within the blocking schemes. But on the passing side of the offense, that feels like a schematic issue where Kyle just hasn't really been in his bag. So I'd love to see some plays where it's clear he's gotten the ball to one of their playmakers in space, and all they have to do is break one tackle for that big explosive play. That would be on Kyle in my book.
Yeah, exactly. Now, talking about explosive plays, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts, that running, he's their main running back, and he's in his second year now, and right now, out of 87 carries, almost 20% of them. So one in almost every 5 carries that he touches the ball, he's going for a gain of 10 plus yards this season. So yeah, he's a real good runner there. He has at least 2 to 3. He hasn't had a game yet this year where he doesn't have an explosive run. His lowest number is every game he has at least 2. So it's going to be interesting tonight with the rain, not having Javon Kinlaw, not having Hurst. The 49ers defensive front is a little banged up, and it's going to be interesting to see can the 49ers contain Jonathan Taylor tonight.
An unstoppable force against an immovable object is what it feels like here. You have Jonathan Taylor, extremely talented running back, and a San Francisco 49ers rush defense that has not allowed a 100-yard rusher since October 31st of 2019. For a running back, it was Lamar Jackson in December of 2019 that was the most recent 100-yard rusher. Jonathan Taylor is true breakaway speed. 4.39 40 time coming out of college. He's averaging 5.4 yards per carry this year. He's a true home run hitter. And in a potentially sloppy game, all it takes is 1 or 2 missed tackles for him to break a big one. So for me, this one comes down to, can the 49ers linebackers step it up and really be sure tacklers this afternoon and keep the ball in front of them. I'm not worried about a 4.5 yard per carry average. I'm worried about that 5.4 where he's hit the home run and he has that 80-yard run that's dragging the average up. If we can hold him from those big explosive plays, I believe that the 49ers have a chance to shut him down.
I agree with you, and that's exactly what I kind of came away with looking at his numbers and everything, because he is averaging, like you said, almost 5.5 yards per carry, but those explosive runs are generating a big number. If they can just contain him and keep him under 10 yards, I think they're going to have a good plan, or have the ability to slow him down and really kind of put the pressure on Carson Wentz to take him and move that offense, which I think will be something to take a look at.
Yeah, and they're getting Quentin Nelson back, and you would think he would primarily be lining up over top Kentavious Street for most of those snaps on the inside, or do you think he would see DJ Jones more frequently?
I think it depends on where the tight end lines up. I'm not sure. I'll keep. That's definitely something to keep an eye on, because it's gonna be one of those two. It's gonna be either DJ Jones or Kentavious Street. Hopefully the 49ers go into this game, especially with the weather conditions, and play a lot of their odd front, which puts somebody over the nose of the center. I think that's going to help their run defense. When you watch the 49ers run defense, they do a pretty good job when they're in that front, where they have it's kind of like an odd looking front, right? And what I mean by odd is guy over the center, and then it looks like a 3 down lineman, and then the fourth guy is out wide.
Yeah, it looks more like a 3-4.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so the 49ers, when they get into that look, they usually do a pretty good job of running, or their run defense. When they struggle is when they're playing their 2 high safeties and they're playing their wide 9, because it just makes it really easy just to turn both those guys out and double team them and get to the linebackers quick. So
we need a big day from DJ Jones. DJ Jones. I had to buy some of Big Dave's All-American barbecue sauce. His dad sells the barbecue sauce, and the proceeds go to charity. It's a great thing.
Yeah,
that's the players.
I keep hearing about that Big Dave's barbecue sauce, because he was on the radio station down here in San Francisco a while back, and they've been talking about it. And it seems like everybody's out there ordering that stuff. You have to tell me how it is, so I can get some of my own Big Dave.
That's right. I heard it's being sold locally in the Bay at one of the major grocery stores, so you may not have to pay the atrocious shipping costs of getting it shipped out.
There you go. Well, we hit on it real quick. The run game, if the 49ers defense can slow down the running game of Jonathan Taylor, that's going to put the game on Carson Wentz's shoulders. Can the 49ers stop Carson Wentz? And that's a question that I asked primarily because, even last year with a bad Eagles team, Wentz was able to come in and beat the 49ers. He beat him with a run early in the game for a touchdown to put the first points on the board for Philadelphia. And then he had the big touchdown pass in the fourth quarter that really put him up where it was the game winner. Can the 49ers stop Carson Wentz tonight?
I have to think that they can. It will be an interesting matchup. Before the injuries, I saw this offense, and not correct me, but if you differ, let me know. But I saw this offense as a bit similar to the way in which Seattle's offense can attack you, that you have a mixture of bigger body possession receivers that still have some speed when you're talking about for the Colts, Pittman versus Metcalf for the Seahawks, and the T.Y. Hilton to not DK Metcalf. God, I'm getting all tongue-tied on this one. You got to spit it out at sometimes. But when you look at the other receiver for Seattle, Tyler Lockett, in comparison to the speed that you have for the Colts. So I thought that it matched up in that same way. And Wentz is similar to Russell Wilson in that he's a mobile quarterback, but he's looking to pass first. And I think he's a poor man's version of Russell Wilson, not as talented of a thrower or as talented as a runner, certainly with all the injuries he's been through. But then you look at the injuries that Indianapolis's offense has been through, losing T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell. And I know Paris Campbell hasn't had all that many receptions this year, but he really did give them an element to their offense of speed. So in losing those two, with Paris Campbell going out, he's true blazer speed, 4.3 40 speed. T.Y. Hilton was 4.4. Fair to wonder if he still is at this point in his career. But those are two speedier wide receivers that would have allowed Indianapolis to get behind San Francisco and would have given them 4 receivers that I think you had to consider legit threats. Now you're looking at their burner really being this rookie who also serves as their kick returner, Ashton Dulin. I will have my eye on him. If Carson Wentz is able to get the ball beyond the 49ers, take those deep shots, that's what I'm most worried about, because then the 49ers, get burned over the top. They're getting gashed up front by Jonathan Taylor. If they can play that complementary football style, keep the Colts in third and medium, third and long, I have faith that the 49ers can get to Wentz. Bosa is obviously racking up the sacks so far, and Samson Ebukam, while we haven't seen the production so far, from what I'm hearing, is now recovered from this hamstring tweak that he had earlier in the season, and I hope that's the difference in seeing production off that other edge, because that seems to be what we're missing so far. Dee Ford with 3 sacks, but as far as percentage of pressures, not all that efficient.
Yeah, correct. And you're going to see him, Michael Pittman's is really his top guy, second-year player out of USC, and he's had a pretty good year. And Pascal's their second. And then they have Cox at the tight end spot. All really good receivers and tight end. And then you also have Taylor coming out of the backfield. So I think from a passing game standpoint, there are some things that they can do to kind of give the 49ers some trouble. Wentz has played really well. He started off the season a little slow. Coming off the injury and really missing so much of his preseason. But over the last 4 weeks, he's kind of turned it around. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's completed right around. He's kind of gone back and forth. He's had a couple of really good games, like in the 70+% completion range, and a couple in the 50s. So hopefully for the 49ers tonight, they're going to hopefully they can. For them to be successful, I think they're going to have to be able to get after him and, force him into that lower percentage of completion range. And the other thing too, the numbers don't all pointed out is he's usually going to give you a pass or two a game that should be intercepted. He's usually good for 1 or 2 that should, bounce off your defender's hands and things like that. So
right.
We'll see what happens tonight if the 49ers can take advantage of that, because that's quite frankly one of the problems the 49ers have had this season on defense, is that they haven't on both sides. The defense hasn't turned the ball over to give the 49ers offense a good field position very often.
Yeah, that's tough. They have been very solid, played very solid to this point, save for that one aspect. But it's a critical aspect, especially in a game like this one that is projected to be tight. 2 teams that are both on some level mirroring each other, very inconsistent, rough starts, but seem to be rounding into some form. It's a little bit more tape for Carson Wentz rounding back into form than Jimmy. We don't know what we're going to get coming out of the injury, but you have to hope that he takes that step forward, because it's going to be needed to overcome this Indianapolis Colts team.
Yeah, for sure. And then one other thing as we get into our predictions for tonight, the last time the 49ers beat the Indianapolis Colts was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was 2001, was the last time the 49ers actually were able to defeat the Indianapolis Colts. What's interesting about that game is that's the loss that led to Jim Mora's epic playoffs
Wow.
rant. The 49ers beating the Colts 20 years ago, the last 49ers victory in this series between these two teams.
You could see that happening at the end. One of these teams is going to lose tonight, and you could almost see that question coming up and reliving that same playoffs rant tonight from either team. Because a loss for either one of these organizations feels like it really knocks them down the ladder when it comes to making that wild card spot in either division, either conference.
Yeah, for sure. Because the 49ers, if they're at 2-4, I think that puts them right back down with Seattle. They kind of got a little bit of a break last week with Seattle losing while they weren't playing, and
right.
they've got to take advantage of that this week and get back to 300 or 500, 3-3, especially with what looks to be a winnable game next week in Chicago on the horizon. But tonight, I think is where it needs to start.
Yeah, emotionally, I can't take a loss, Jack. So that's why they have to win. Is where some of us need that uplifting win.
So are you saying that if the 49ers lose tonight, you might be jumping out of an airplane next weekend? Is that?
Yeah, I might take a page out of Jesse Naylor's book and jump out of an airplane and see if they packed my chute correctly.
There you go. There you go. Well, real quick, since we're on the topic, what's your prediction for tonight's game? Let's put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a really tight game. The type of game where there are a lot of field goals attempted. You're looking at backup kickers for both teams, so that's a bit wild. It's unpredictable as far as whether we'll have a light drizzle or a heavy downpour, but with high winds predicted either way, you have to think that it will be primarily a ground game. Both teams attempting to do pretty much the same thing in running the ball effectively, the short passing game, and the occasional shot. And it'll be a question of who's able to pop the ball loose and force that turnover on defense, or just have a really, really tight game plan and execute and hold on to the ball and maximize efficiency. I think that the 49ers pull this one out. I'm emotionally desperate, so I need it, Jack, but I'm predicting this one turns out in the 49ers' favor, 14-12.
14-12. We're pretty close on our number here. If it wasn't for the rain, I would have go a little bit higher on my total. I originally, back on Monday when I did my way too early prediction on the Hammer and Nail show with Jesse, I said it was going to be 23-20, I think it was, 49ers. I'm knocking that down just a little bit. I think the 49ers are going to be able to get 17 points tonight and win 17-16. Tight ball game coming down to the wire like it always seems to be when the 49ers play at Levi's, but just with enough to pull it out. And I know we're expecting the weather to be not very good, but from some of the reports that I've seen, and I was mentioning this to you before we went live, I think we might not have quite the downpour that we're expecting in Santa Clara, but I think the wind is going to be howling regardless, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's fingers crossed for a good game either way.
There you go. So there you have it. Both of us have them winning. Yours was 17-14, or no,
14-12, an odd 14. Score. I don't know if it's going to be Michael Badgley with 4 field goals or whether there'll be some missed extra points in there. But okay. 14-12 is the official prediction there. I think Joey Sly probably misses a field goal there that could have made it 17-12. That's the official prediction.
Yep. So there you go. You've got Rob at 14-12. You have me at 17-16. Both of us predicting 49ers win. So for all of you that joined us today, thank you very much for coming on and watching the show. If you're, if you could please like and subscribe and do all those fun things and even comment on the show if you get a chance, that'd be fantastic. Rob has his own channel. What's your channel that they can go to, Rob?
Yeah, Google Rob Schuh, SCHUH, and the YouTube channel will pop up. It is under that very same name. You can follow me on Twitter, The Left Schuh, SCHUH, just a little play on words there. And yeah, head over. I'm looking into doing a 49ers pregame pump-up show right before Sunday Night Football tonight. So if you get over there and subscribe today, you can see some new live content, have fantastic guests on the channel. Jack joins me on a regular basis. It's fantastic. So come and subscribe, join, like, all that good stuff.
There you go. Perfect. And yeah, like I said, go join and subscribe to Rob's channel because he does good stuff. And look how nice his picture is compared to mine. He is a pro. And he sounds like he's in a studio and ready to get going. So appreciate him coming on. Appreciate all of you joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and enjoy the game tonight. And we will be back with you shortly. Thank you all very much and have a great day.
Cheers.